A quote from page 91, the Book of Brennan. At some point, probably during your second year, you'll realize the trust you feel for your friends and family has nothing on the loyalty you develop for your co-hosts.
Welcome back to Between Pages and Friends, a book club podcast hosted by Con and Lauren, two book-loving besties, and Jon and Kyle, their real-life book boyfriends. I'm Kyle.
I'm Lauren.
I'm Con.
And I'm Jon. In today's episode, we're discussing chapters 22 to 36 of Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. This is a book club style podcast, meaning there will be no spoilers here for future chapters or books, so if you've only read up to this point, this is a safe space to read along with us. We'd love for you to share this podcast with your book besties and or significant other as well, so you can enjoy this epic series together too.
Additionally, this is your mild content warning. Iron Flame is a new adult book, meaning it was written for audiences 18 and up. Therefore, our conversations about this book are also best suited to adults. We will be discussing themes and quotes from this section that include, but are not limited to, shower sex, physical torture, Jack freaking Barlo, revenge in the form of murder, Grand Theft Archives, spiked lemonade, and Major Varrish being the literal worst.
If you're a fan of this podcast, you are cordially invited to consider joining us on Patreon. It is the best community of book lovers, and we love chatting with them on Discord about these episodes every week. We have a spoiler-free chat for our first-time readers and a spoilers chat where we freak out about all the boys' freakishly accurate predictions. You'll also receive early ad-free access to new episodes, live events, a monthly book club, promo codes, merch discounts, bi-weekly D&D nights, and tons more. We would love to get to know you more on Patreon.
And lastly, the best way to support any podcast is by writing a review on Audible or Apple Podcasts. It only takes a moment and leaves a lasting impact, helping our show reach more book besties. Here's a recent 5-star review on Audible from our new bestie, Nanciness, titled My New Favorite Way to Get Chores Done. Seriously, the only way I get anything done is if I listen to a book or podcast while I do it. Jon, Con, Lauren, and Kyle have been with me this year as I've painted 2 rooms, rearranged my library, and done innumerable sinkfuls of dishes. Nothing makes dreary housework go by like listening to Kyle spitball his way to a perfect summary of the climax of a book, or Jon's hilarious chapter recaps. First-time reader pods are one of my favorite kinds, and this is a gem. It was so much fun to listen along while Lauren and Kyle discovered Throne of Glass, and being there as the guys get into Fourth Wing has been just as good. Thank you for being my book besties and unwitting housework buddies. Oh. Thank you, your royal Nanciness.
Nice.
Oh, that is so nice. I didn't know we got so much work done around the house.
I know.
Wow, yeah, I feel productive.
If you want to come over here and you can listen to us and do housework here, that would be great.
But we're actually being serious, so give us a DM if you...
The offer stands, yes.
All right, before we roll into today's episode, I do need to take a quick moment to wish the happiest of birthdays to one of my favorite people in the world, Kyle. You are the funniest, the most wonderful husband, dad, and friend. Every day with you is an adventure, and I'm so lucky to share my life with you. May your birthday be filled with adventure, good stories, and absolutely no natural ones. Happy birthday.
Thanks.
Yay!
You're older.
Happy birthday.
Yay.
All right, and welcome back to Con's Declassified Fantasy Pronunciation Guide, where we are referencing the audiobooks narrated by Rebecca Soler to highlight all the new names and places mentioned in this chapter section. First up with places, we have Zolia, where Cliffsbane Academy is located, Pelham, an outpost near the Signy border, Keldavi, an outpost along the Breivik border, Corden, where Viscount Takaris lives, Shedrick Woods, and the Beatha River, which keeps making me laugh because it sounds like Ibiza.
That's just a bunch of vacation places to go. Aspen, Ibiza.
Dreyfus.
Yeah, sounds great.
For characters, we meet Kat, aka Catriona, Zaden's ex-lover, General Fenella, the commander of Breivik's Griffin fleet, R.I.P., Lyra and Warwick, 2 of the first 6 riders whose journals the squad found in this section. Alec is King Tauri's oldest son, killed by Zaden during threshing his first year. Halden, Aric's older brother and the crown prince of Navarre. Other students mentioned are Sorel, Vicia, Avalyn, Lynx, Baylor, Misha, Aya, R.I.P., Cadet Samuelson, Cully, and Channing? Chapman? Charon? Something like that. That's what Violet says. For text and excerpts in this section, we have Tactics, a personal memoir by Lieutenant Lyron Panchek. The Code of Crichton, the healer's version of the Codex, which menders are not bound to. Griffins of Poor Meal, a study in combat by Major Garion Savoy. The Study of Winged Creatures, a history of the Island Wars. And then for world building this week, we have Old Lucerish, the language Lyra and Warwick's journals are in, and Arnica, a perennial herb used to treat muscle and joint pain. And here is Jon with your chapter recaps for the end of part 1 of Iron Flame.
Hi, here I am.
Hello.
And here we go. Violet dreams of Venin, and not in a good way. In the real world, Zaden is taking Violet to the forge at Basgiath. But as they enter the tunnels, Varrish is there to greet them. And we have our first round of RSC interrogation, aka torture sesh, for the squad. Zaden kind of tries to make a case for her, but this isn't something that he can really stop from happening, so off she goes with Rhiannon, Rick, and Sawyer. They're taken to the secret, interrogation room chamber. Professor Grady gives them kind of a rundown of what's about to happen. He also informs them that they have been given classified information to protect. He asks them all to share a secret that no one else outside the 4 of them could possibly know, claiming that they'll try to force it out of them, along with some secret phrases that they have already been given. Violet decides on her secret, telling her fellow cadets that their infantry is killing Promish civilians at the border. 2 riders Violet has never seen before enter and begin interrogating them. The woman slaps Violet around, claiming she's the weakest, and the rest of her fellow cadets have been carrying her along, trying to get the others to, kind of give up a little bit of information here. They then turn on Riddick, hitting him in the face, and the cadets wait around for hours. The torturers return, but this time, Varrish walks in, dismissing them, and in he brings Dain, buttering him up into reading her memories. But Dain refuses because it's against the rules and walks out. Good for Dain. Varrish punches Violet's shoulder out of her socket, and she passes out. She wakes up to Nolan having mended her. When Nolan leaves, he gives them a little opening to escape. They grab their belongings on the way out. They have to get through one final locked door. Lesser magic doesn't work on this door, but Violet feels that one of her knives is hot and tingling. It's the one that Zaden gave her. Apparently, the magic imbued in the daggers can unlock a warded door, warded lock, and they escape, earning a patch doing so as well. After a few days, they're back in battle brief, but something has everyone up in a roar. There are leaflets on every seat with the headline, Zolia falls to Dragonfire. They try and kind of figure out whether or not it's propaganda, if it could be true, or somebody falsified the leaflet, but the information could still somewhat be true. Violet comes to the conclusion that it was printed at the school. Markham's caught off guard by it, but he's good, and he addresses the class. As he does so, Rhiannon kind of asks Violet, hey, what do you think he's going to do? And Violet predicts Markham to discredit, deflect, then distract, which he does exactly. And he has a doozy of a distraction as he reveals what Nolan has been hard at work on for all these months. Resurrecting Jack freaking Barlo, who he reintroduces as Jack enters the room. As they settle down, Devera goes into some news. An outpost was attacked, and it was Samara. Devera goes on to say that while no riders were killed, one was severely wounded, and she gives Violet a little signal that it was Zaden. Of course, Violet immediately jumps up and heads out to the courtyard where Taryn picks her up, and they jet off to Samara. As they arrive, Mira meets her and gives a brief overview of what happened. The outpost was attacked, and she says that Zaden basically saved the outpost. Mira was out on patrol, so she didn't really know anything, but she came back to it. She points to where Zaden is in the sparring gym or whatever. Violet heads there and finds Zaden and Garrick are sparring. She's overcome by Taryn's emotion and can't get a hold on it, so Zaden rushes her to an ice-cold shower and has her get her shields up immediately. As she's freaking out and getting pissed because he's kind of thinking her reaction is funny, he finally shows her his mended wound, having almost lost an arm. And now, dearest listeners, back by popular demand, I'll be describing the bathing chamber scene using only emojis in my new segment titled Emoji Erotica.
I'm so excited for this.
PSA first. If there was not an emoji that I wanted, I combined two to create it. When shared visually, if you will see, you'll have to check out on YouTube or we'll probably post it. They will be together in parentheses. Okay, here we go. Shower head spraying water, kissy face, tongue, kissy face, fire emoji, pants, eggplant, microphone, eye roll, stopwatch, parentheses, rock and door, kissy face, eggplant, shirt, red X, chess bishop, chair, kissy face, pants, 2 fingers, surprise face, chess bishop, 2 fingers, pants, socks, shoes, eggplant, door, exasperated face, parentheses, baseball, bat, rock, chair, shower spraying water, shower head spraying water, horse, eggplant, lightning, shadows, heart eyes emoji, wave, lightning, shadows, parentheses, rock, chain link breaking, shower head spraying water, squirt emoji, exasperated face, exasperated face.
Whoa.
Wow.
Nay, am I right?
There's a long one.
That was erotic.
My other thing too with this is I challenge our listeners and or watchers. There are a couple of those that I have starred that I want to challenge anybody to find the specific part or word that I am referencing. Moving on. That night, Violet accompanies Zaden to a weapon drop-off. Taryn will not allow Violet to dismount as Zaden drops down and meets with that one chick who met them at the lake at Resson. Zaden berates them about the attack on the outpost. They argue about some stuff, Zaden warning Serena to try and get the Griffin Riders to keep it together and stop attacking them, basically. Then we learn that they would have a luminary already if Zaden would let Viscount Takaris witness Violet's power. If only it were that simple was basically his defense. We find out about Catriona, Zaden's ex. Also sounds like a stripper name. Then she tells him about everything that has happened. The Zolia leak, Barlo, the RSE, interrogation with Varrish and Dain, and also Aric. She returns to Basgiath ready for whatever punishment she may receive for leaving and going to Samara without having leave. Varrish catches her on the way back to her room, checking her bag as usual, and trying to give her just a bunch of dumb charges. Kaori joins in and questions Varrish's actions. Varrish tries to say that she's still due to face a court-martial for departing without leave, when Kaori cuts him off, saying, "Oh, you must not have spoken to Panchek yet," and explains that he submitted his expert opinion that Violet is not to be punished for what was clearly the choice and urging of her dragon, and that she's clear of all charges. Ha, yes! And then they have a wonderfully brief exchange where Kaori again questions Varrish's actions, and they all part ways. By the way, this was all outside Rhiannon's room. Rhi drags her in where her and Riddick and Sawyer are just kind of hanging out. Rhi was able to use her signet to get the dagger that Vi was hiding, and then she comes clean to all 3 of them, telling them just about everything. They decide to help Vi with reading through books for info on the wards, and Riddick comes in clutch with knowing that 2 of the first 6 have journals in the archives. And it's time for threshing for the first years. They head out to see who makes it back with the dragon. They get to see Aric and finally Sloane come back. Violet has to leave because she's on watch at the fire pit. She goes to relieve Aya. However, 4 infantry soldiers come right up after her. They attack. Aya gets a sword through the chest. The final soldier alive gets an advantage on Violet and tries to throw her off. She catches a small ledge and barely hangs on as she looks up at him. He gets a sword through the neck. And it's Jack Barlo, of all people, there to save Violet. He seems to have taken his second chance at life seriously and gives her one as well, claiming that they're now even. Riddick shows up with news from Jesinia that she found the underground vault, but needs royal blood to pass the wards. Violet tells Zaden about all that happened and that she told the others as well about all this other stuff. The squad shows up with Aric at her room while they're chatting, and then we find out that Zaden killed Aric's older brother. They head to the archives together to look for the journals. They're in disguise as scribes following Jesinia. Some of the squad peel off to their stations while Aric, Zaden, Vi, and Imogen head down to the royal vault. They only have a small window of time to find what they need, or else the vault door closes and basically they die from the magic that preserves the books. At the last minute, Aric snatches Vi's wrist and pulls her through the first ward with him into the room. Luckily it works, so they now have the 2 of them to look through the area. With only minutes left, they have to leave. They find a hidden compartment where the journals are. Aric reaches through the wards to get the journals, but as he pulls them out, his arms start to blister from the magic, recognizing him as not the king. They book it back up to the entrance, barely making it through in time before the door would have sealed their fate. Zaden leaves shortly after to take one of the journals to Brennan. Violet's headed back to her room with the other when Nolan stops her, gives her a drink, which is laced with that power-dampening stuff. Oh my gosh. She wakes up in the brig. Varrish tries to break her over the course of a few days. She hallucinates Liam in there with her, and he honestly helps her get through a lot of it. Finally, Varrish brings in Dain, explaining what has happened and what Violet is trying to do. Dain agrees to look into Violet's memories, and Violet throws at him her memories of the Wyvern, of how they were sent to Aricia to die, and about the venom. She shows Dain that Varrish and the others have erased their very history to avoid a conflict and keep them safe while innocents die. She shoves her memories of Leon at him as well, along with the torture Varrish has been inflicting upon her these past few days. He staggers back after seeing all that. He requests the knife from Violet so that he can observe what they've been stealing from them, so he can confirm the knife that he has and the one that he saw in her memory. He then plunges the knife into Varrish and frees Violet from the chair. Nora tries to stop them, but Zaden arrives at the last minute, slashing her throat, which we will talk about later. Violet defends Dain from Zaden. Zaden finally tells Violet that he loves her, is in love with her, actually. As they start to head for the exit, General Sorengale shows up. She gives Violet the antidote for whatever Nolan gave her. Violet learns that her mother has been working with Zaden and that she had struck a deal with him back in her first year. She gave Zaden a quadrant and allowed his marked ones a chance to survive at Basgiath. In return, Zaden was to protect Violet in her first year in the Rider's Quadrant. This is why Zaden didn't kill her in any of those easy moments back in Book 1. Her mother also confirms that she was the one who gave Zaden those scars on his back. Lilith still doesn't know everything, however. She learns now that Zaden is the one who has been stealing weapons from Basgiath, and she still has no knowledge of Brennan being alive either. At this point, Zaden wants to gather the marked ones and leave right away, but Violet insists that they tell everyone at Basgiath the situation and give them the choice of whether to stay or leave. So they call formation. Dain announces to all of the students that Basgiath's leadership is trying to cover up what's happening on the borders with the Wyvern and the Venom. They pretty much react with general shock, disbelief. Several of the students argue with one another about what to believe, and to get them on their side, Violet has Tarn share the memory of Resin. After this, many of the students believe Dain and decide to follow them and the rest to Aricia in one of the biggest riots Violet has ever seen, which includes over 200 dragons and 100 riders, nearly half the quadrant. When Violet arrives at Ryerson House in Aricia, she's greeted by Brennan, who is quite surprised at the large army she has brought with them.
That was a lot of stuff.
There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that was a lot.
So much stuff.
But
I haven't written that long of a recap in a while.
I'm going to say, that was a lot of stuff happened. Let's get right into it, starting with the creepy Venom dream.
Yes, the Venom dream. I just had to point out here when it mentions his lips are cracked and dry, and I wrote, and sensual, no doubt. The old sensual lips.
Oh, yes.
This was a joke from Throne of Glass, talking about the, who was it?
Is that a spoiler? The
It's
Vogue.
a huge spoiler.
Oh, spoiler alert.
Talking about some bad guys with sensual lips.
Yes.
Okay, there we go. That's good.
Yes.
Just use that.
Aren't they all?
Aren't they all bad guys, or aren't they all sensual?
Honestly, in those books, everyone's pretty sensual in one way or another.
That's a good point.
And in this creepy dream, the Venom says, "Fight me and die, or join me and live beyond the ages, but you will never escape me, not when I've waited centuries for someone with your power." This never really hit me before. I guess it makes sense that Venom would live longer if they're channeling more magic than they were given, but centuries and beyond the ages really sunk in for me for the first time here. I don't know if you call them immortal, but that really hit me.
Well, yeah, so that makes me think they're at least as old as Tarn, right? If it's been centuries. But also, could these be the same Venom from the Great War, the first time that the Venom were all attacking and doing stuff? How long
Good question.
have these guys been around?
Yeah, and if that's the case, then how many are there?
There's got to be a bajillion.
At least.
At least a bajillion.
A bajillion per platoon, I'd say.
Yeah, I don't know why that had never occurred to me or registered before, but I was whoa. Yeah.
Yeah, I noted at the end when she woke up and in her POV, she says, just a dream, just a dream, just a dream. But I was like, God damn, that dream, especially the end, I was just I was not expecting it to go that dark.
It's freaky.
Holy crap, this is kind of crazy.
Well, and especially because we're taking breaks in reading to record the episodes. And so having taken a little bit of a break and then getting back and it's immediately into a dream, that threw me off for a minute.
For
and
sure.
then obviously getting to that line, it's oh, dang. That was wild.
A little bit later, Zaden is leading her to Basgiath's forge. And I was literally so pumped for this. I was like, oh, this is going to be sweet. We're going to see it. And then frickin' they get stopped by Varrish. And at this point, I'm
Frickin'
like,
Varrish.
they may try and like break into it later to use it possibly. But here, I was just bummed that they might never get to see it or use it like ever again, especially with the decision that they just made to the end of this part 1. So we'll see, I guess. But speaking of that, so Major Varrish blocks their path and he's like, nice to see you, Lieutenant Ryerson. My first thought was like, yo, how the fuck was he already down there waiting for them, first of all? Like, we had a conversation about this. They're headed down to the forge, right? They're rushing. One, like, how does he even know where they're headed? Because they go through a door and, like, go down some stairs, I think, and then go into a tunnel. So is he just, like, sitting there waiting for them? First of all, how? And then second, when he like shouts at whoever it was it Grady or Carr? They start coming down the stairs. I'm like, how is this happening? They had to have been like mere steps behind Violet and Zaden to be already coming through the door and coming down. So I'm just like, what's happening here?
They weren't they trying to capture her for this RSC stuff? Like they were literally following her around to try to like catch her unawares, as your favorite word is, to catch her unawares. And they said like they couldn't get into her room because it was warded or whatever. So they at
That's
least
a good point.
probably knew she was
Still
in
creepy.
her room.
But still doesn't
definitely
explain
still
how
creepy,
Varrish like knew where they were going and got ahead of them. It would make sense for
Yeah.
them following close behind.
Or if it was like a more common place for her to visit, not a part of the school she's literally never been to.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Right.
saying. At first, when we started talking about this a little more, I was like, is this part of his signet? Like, can he somehow sense where, I guess, somebody is going or, like, sense somebody's thoughts, like, in a way?
For me, it's every time that Varrish shows up, and it happens 2 times in this chapter chunk, where it says something about him, and it uses the word greasy. And so this one is, his smile is just as greasy as ever. And I really don't like that word, and how many times it gets used to describe a person. And then Kyle and I were talking about it, and he tried to do a greasy smile, and it was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. But as far as Varrish goes, it just is a major ick.
Yeah.
Why greasy?
Because it's gross, and he's gross.
It
I
is.
guess.
And then they're still down there. Zaden is kind of putting up a little bit of a fight for them, like taking Violet. I believe they're mind speaking right here, but she says, you can't protect me from this any more than you could at threshing. And he said, you weren't mine at threshing. And she replies, I'm not yours now. And I just wrote, denial. Huge denial. She's still just like sitting on this denial throne is what it is.
A throne of denial.
Yeah. You're sitting on a throne of denial.
Throne of denial.
I saw John's note, and I just put a GIF in here from Finding Nemo where they're like in their little shark AA meeting. Marlin's like, I don't have a problem. And they go, oh, okay. Denial.
Yeah, exactly.
I just had to put in a quick note for our girl Segale, because I think we've heard her talk like maybe 5 times, maybe, and that includes the bonus chapters that are from Zaden's POV.
Yeah,
And
maybe.
yeah, and Violet talks to her, and then Zaden's all like, you went to Segale? And that's like a whole moment for them. But I just had to give a quick shout out to our girl Segale, since she's here, she exists. So
I did like that whole scene. It gave very much like a "you told my mom" vibe.
Yeah. And I love how reluctant she was about it. Like, okay, fine. Like this one time.
only so this conversation ends.
Yeah.
And then we end this chapter as Zaden is leaving Violet to her first RSC torture sesh, and he turns to her and says, Violence, remember, it's only the body that's fragile. You are unbreakable. And I love this hype for her. I love that she like repeats unbreakable back to him. It just is becoming like a mantra in her head, and it comes up again like a few more times.
Yeah.
And I just like, oh, I love this.
Nice. I like it. And that rolls us right into chapter 23. My first note here was when Grady, after he's done like explaining to them, giving them, I guess, tips or whatever, like once they're in the room, right before he leaves, he goes, remember, we're doing this for you, not to you. And I wrote, oh, thanks.
Sarcastic thumbs up.
I picture Riddick's thumbs up here. Like,
Speaking of Riddick, at one point they're told to all tell each other a secret. And Riddick's secret is that he's terrified of snakes. He said, "That's my weakness. I scream like a toddler every time I see one." And I highlighted this in my note was, are we expecting some like Indiana Jones style scene where Riddick sees a snake but has to like cross all of them to get something, and it's going to be an epic moment for him?
Or just some comic relief.
Yeah, well, Riddick's there, so yeah, that makes sense.
I feel like his dragon could imitate a large snake just to scare him. Just like
they always say their heads are like snake-like, or whatever.
Yeah.
When
I wonder if that
around.
freaks him out. He's like, "Stop it, dude! You know I hate that."
And then it's Violet's turn to tell her secret. And she says, "I'm in love with Zaden Ryerson." And everyone's just like, "Yeah, we already knew that. Like, definitely not a secret." And I wrote, "Nice try, BB. Not a secret. Everybody already knows."
Yeah, that's pretty good. We get to the point where they're sort of starting to take part in this food and drink that was brought to them, and she smells the water or whatever it was supposed to be and says, "Stop, don't drink it." And I was like, finally, someone who checks a drink before they chug it. It's like, after all these times of people just being like, "Thanks, sworn enemy."
Yep. And
For now, at least.
Right, yeah, for now.
as soon as I read that they had brought like food and drink in, I was like, "Don't drink anything. Don't do it."
Yes.
And also, I had another note here where I thought maybe the professors would have anticipated their hesitation here to like drink anything from them.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking like, oh, they're putting in the food, like it's in the biscuits or the jam or something. And that didn't happen. So I'm like honestly kind of disappointed that they did the same trick like twice in a row and expected them to take it. Maybe to just think the students are like dumb or something. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it apparently worked on every other squad.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
She did say something about the biscuits being like really dry, so that if you were trying to eat them and not drink that, like it would make you really thirsty or something. But still,
It's crazy to me to think that this is like something that they want in their regular classes now, though. Because, like, I get maybe your dragon isn't nearby or something if you're captured, but wouldn't you want them to have some sort of connection? I don't know. It doesn't feel like they're training them for a real world scenario. Because if they just made this thing up, then the enemies have no way of getting rid of that bond. So, like, what's the point of...
Yeah, true.
If you're training to lose your dragon bond, you're probably dead anyway.
yeah, that's a great point.
To me, it's just one of those things that they're not really training them for the real world. Like, they're not training them for what's outside the borders. They're training themselves almost to control the writers, like, as leadership.
Yeah.
It'd be different if they didn't say, "Yeah, we just made this concoction," because then as a writer, I would think, "Oh, maybe this is something that could happen," you know? But
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I do appreciate whenever Grady walks in, they're just having a conversation like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe they would try to do this." And then Grady walks in and she's immediately like, "We're disconnected from our dragons. How dare you?" Like, and it's like really quick turnaround. I was like, "Oh, good job, squad leader." Like, that's why you have the title. Look at you.
Yep.
And then Grady walks out, gives them one last little pep talk about, remember all the things that you've read and all the things that you've learned. And Riddick goes, "Is now a good time to admit that I haven't done any of the portions of the reading?" And they're all like, "No." Freaking Riddick.
I just wrote alongside this note, "This is what I say every week to Lauren, like a day before we're supposed to record." Is like, "Yeah, I haven't read anything. I need to be left alone for like 7 hours, please."
Yeah, that's true.
7 hours.
And then we get the part where this is the guy that comes in. I forget. Did he have a name?
I don't know.
No, I think we just get Nora.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is the guy. But he says, in layman's terms, "I'll know when you're lying, and you are lying." Referencing his signet. It's similar to Nora's, which we find out like later. But I wrote like, honestly, kind of sweet. Like, I like this signet. And even Nora's is kind of cool too.
Mm-hmm.
They're both lie
Truth
detectors,
sayer.
right?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I think so.
It said his signet is similar to Lieutenant Nora's and has to do with bodily functions.
Oh,
so I don't
yeah.
know if he could read maybe heart rate or something like that.
Right.
Or if you pee yourself, he'll know you're lying.
That guy's gonna crap so bad.
Your note here says, "I mean, honestly, that's kind of sweet." And so when I was reading it, when I was going through notes, I was like, "Oh, that's kind of sweet." Like, you were thinking When you're lying, and you are lying. Aww. And I was like, okay, Jon, sure. Whatever. Moving on and writing my own notes.
It's a weird sentiment, but we'll just keep rolling.
Lying is one of Jon's kinks. Love a good lie.
Aww. You just lied to
So sweet.
You lied for me?
to me. But going on with these people, I highlighted because I thought it was very funny where it's the girl. What did we say her name was? Nora. And she says, as if we don't already know everything already. So tell us the secrets you're keeping. I was like, oh, so you're saying you don't know everything already. Got it.
Well, and so this is, I know, Jon, in your recap, you said that these were two people Violet had never seen before, but Nora is the name of one of the people who has been with Varrish inspecting her bags and
Dumping
stuff.
her bag out.
Yeah.
She's
like
the
on the
bag
flight
dumper.
field before she leaves for Samara.
So then they would know if she's lying about stuff in her bag or somewhere. And she didn't even know that.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that the guy that's with her here is the same guy that's been
Yeah.
there, but I don't know, like Varrish's little henchman or something.
I mean, it seems like she can tell when someone verbally lies based on what we see later. And maybe he can tell bodily functions, so maybe that's why they kept checking. 'Cause she never said nothing was in her bag, but maybe they dumped it out and nothing was there. But he could be like, no, she's definitely hiding something, though.
Yeah, like he can tell the nonverbal cues and she can say the verbal ones or whatever.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What a cute pair.
And after knowing that Dain trains with Varrish, then both of those people probably also train with Varrish.
Yeah.
So
Makes sense.
Yeah, I
He
can
has
see
a
that.
type. I mean, like, seriously, they all have different ways of finding out the truth.
it sounded so creepy.
Yeah.
Well, Varrish is creepy.
It's greasy.
Yes. Yeah.
A grease ball.
All right, chapter 24. This is a pre-chap about
Pre-chap.
the burnout effect, and that is when a squad flares too fast, too bright to sustain the pace. They rise through the ranks, secure every patch, win every challenge, and then ... they inexplicitly falter and then fall. And I really don't like that as a pre-chap going into a whole entire chapter about the Iron Squad. And then winning a patch. Yep, not a fan of that one.
Let that be a lesson to you straight A students. C's get degrees. Slow down.
We can all see what kind of student Kyle was. This is when Dain actually shows up. He just says, "What am I doing here?" And Varrish says he's testing a theory. But while we're waiting for our guest to arrive, you should practice on her. And then he tries to get him to read Violet's memories. But honestly, finally, someone is picking up on the fact that Violet and Zaden have this whole mind-to-mind talk, because I feel like they're extremely obvious with it. They don't do a very good job hiding that fact, even though the first time it happened, Dain was like, "You're gonna give it away." And then it's they just stare at each other for a really long time. Not that I want Varrish to be the one figuring it out, but somebody needs to call him out on it. So
Earlier when I saw your note, I tried to find out did we ever learn any more of his past? Was his dragon ever mated to someone that he had that connection with, that he could extrapolate being oh, their dragons are mated, they might have this connection?
no, but that's something good to remember for the future if we do ever hear of somebody who had a mated dragon or has mated dragons, thinking that they could probably communicate with themselves too.
Yep.
I don't know. It sounded like it wasn't super public knowledge that can happen.
Maybe the dragons knew more than the humans did about that.
Yeah.
So while they're having this conversation, Varrish tells Dain to use his signet on Violet, and he says no. And then Varrish says, "Then who are you going to practice on to extend your ability past recent events? We're running out of civilians around here for Nolan to mend." And then he goes on to say some more manipulative crap. But what does that mean? Is Varrish making Dain practice on civilians to the point that he's hurting them with his signet? And not just that they would have to see a healer or recover on their own. They have to be mended?
I had this exact same note. I have no idea. I don't like it, and I don't like that Dain would be a part of it.
Yeah. Because it wouldn't be civilians from the border, because if he was practicing on them, then he would know too much. It would have to be civilians from inside.
That's true. Ooh,
But
yeah.
why are they
Yikes.
being brought in the first place?
And what does that mean? I don't like that he could hurt someone like that by trying to read more than their recent. Does that mean he's pushing Dain to burnout? Or he's like pushing him too far with his signet.
I wouldn't be surprised with how he treated Violet.
Yeah.
Right.
Jeez. Yeah, I did not like that. Did not sit well with me.
But it is interesting as we like, even in this chapter section, learn about Rhee's power growing and stuff like that. So it's like, how does Dain practice? Like Violet can go up on the mountain and shoot 100,000 lightning bolts, but like, what is Dain doing to practice other than potentially something like this? Obviously, I don't want him to like cause pain, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's crazy.
My next note here, a little bit confusing, but let's roll with it. I think this is like right after what they say in your note here. When she realizes like, holy shit, while Carr is my teacher, Varrish is Dain's. And then she kind of like realizes like, what the hell is our vice commandant signet? My first note here was, I was totally right. And then as I was writing this note in our notes, I wrote, I don't remember what I was right about. So I'm thinking it may have been, maybe I had an idea of what his signet was with this saying like Varrish is Dain's teacher. I was like, oh, it has to do with something with like telepathy or like mind reading or something. And it may have been that Con, you and I were maybe talking about this like leading up to it.
Yeah.
And then I put that in there like, oh, I was totally right, but I didn't put any context for our conversation.
Nope.
So maybe that's what it was.
I don't remember.
I think it was last time or maybe a time before where like someone said, I think it was Taryn in Violet's mind, where he was like, oh, he's barbaric, he shouldn't have this much power. And then he said, as if he heard that thought.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, I don't want to do anything barbaric. And you were like, ooh, can he read minds?
Yeah.
But all we know is that you were right. So good job, Jon.
Yeah.
Good job. Yeah. Points
thanks,
to you.
Guys. Wow. So supportive.
I had Dain's little quote where he said, I will not participate in an interrogation assessment of a cadet with a prior injury. This is him using the rules to get out of being a douche, basically. And I just wrote, is this a redemption arc I smell, perhaps? He's using the rules for good?
Oh my God. If I was listening to this podcast, I would literally hate my life.
I would like to apologize to my future self who will be editing this episode.
And all our listeners who potentially have to listen to that.
At this point, I was going to give Dain some points for this, for like saying no and wanting to, and like walking out. But he still lifted his hands first. He didn't say no until after Violet did.
Yep.
Hey,
I agree.
always check for consent.
Yeah.
Right?
So
I did also think it was weird that he like started to go in for it. Why did her backing away and just simply saying no? Like, why did that?
I mean, if he's hurting other people doing that, then potentially he's had that scenario before. It just wasn't with Violet.
Yeah. And the line before where he lifted his hands and tried, Violet admitted in her own narration, like, oh crap, he's doing a real good job convincing Dain to do this. And then Dain started to do it. And then Varrish had to like lay out like a 3-paragraph essay why to do it. So at least all it took for Violet was just saying, no, down boy, and then he left.
So after Dain denies reading her memories and then he leaves and Varrish says, effing rule follower, back to typical tactics, I guess. He draws back a hand before I can brace and throws a hard punch to my dislocated shoulder, and that's when she passes out. And slight spoiler here for Crescent City series.
Kyle's removing his headphones.
I was going to say, man, I hope this guy gets it worse than Sabine. Me and Connor briefly talked about this, and she actually recorded a video for it. She'll have to show Lauren.
He was heated.
I was heated. I've never been so heated. I was really heated with Sabine's character when I was reading Crescent City. It is like so much more inflamed with Varrish.
Really?
Especially after like some of this stuff.
Wow. And he's only here for like half a book.
I know.
That's wild.
All right.
You can
come back in, Kyle. Join us.
Headphones on. You're just making fun of us.
So we get a quote from Nolan that says, oh, this is when they're out in the hall talking. I've been thinking about my other patient. Nolan says casually. What about him? Varrish replies, and I just wrote, oh, I've been thinking too. Him, you say? Narrowing down my options by about 50%.
That's right.
I can't express how mad that makes me. Just putting that out there from moment one. Okay, I was confused about this with Sawyer. This is whenever he helps take the door down, and it says his fingers tremble and the hinges smoke, then melt. Hot metal drips down the edges of the door as he works. And I'm like, wait, isn't his power just bending metal? This feels more like a fire wielder or somebody who can like make it all hot and whatever, and not a meteorologist or whatever Jon called it.
It's manipulating metals.
Yeah. I wrote, technically, if his magic controls metal via the movement of the element's molecules themselves, then the rapid acceleration of said molecules would indeed lead to a heating effect. So...
All right.
Technically.
Only because you put the little glasses emoji nerd guy.
Yeah.
Well, I believe it. And then as they're escaping, Riddick says, we should consider quitting the quadrant. We'd be kick-ass thieves. With dragons, Sawyer agrees. Unstoppable, Riddick says with a grin. I just love their little back and forth, and I just love them.
Yeah, I love the bromance too. I put a little picture of Sean and Gus from Psych under that because that's who they remind me of in that moment, with just that like
100%.
back and forth finishing each
In,
other's
like,
sentences.
A very serious moment as well.
Yeah.
And then we get like Violet's magic dagger that opens doors all of a sudden. Is this one of her daggers like Zaden gives her? All of the ones with like the Tyrish runes. And doesn't she have 8 ? She has like a whole bunch.
I know this particular one was the extra one that he gave her after they met with the Griffin people or whatever earlier in the book.
Got
Because he
it.
like kept
Yeah.
one. I'm assuming this one, it's the same like type of dagger, but in my head it was this one had been imbued with magic, and like her other daggers are not like imbued.
Yeah. The other ones have runes on it. This one has the alloy in it. The actual like ward, whatever.
Yep.
I'm with you. Okay, because I was like, if they are all have runes, then what do these other daggers
That'd be
do?
crazy.
But
Yeah.
that would be super crazy. And they're all just like surprise magic. But okay, that makes more sense.
This is the real one. The other 8 are like the movie prop versions of it.
Got it. The ones that like kind of stab.
Yeah.
Like the little knife goes into the hilt,
Yeah.
so you don't actually
Yeah.
hurt anyone. Got it. Chapter 25, they get to Battle Brief, and there's just like the paper on everyone's chair that says that Zolia has fallen to dragon fire, and how Markham just is able to literally convince everyone so easily with his whole discredit, deflect, and distract plan, as Violet calls it, which is wild, and that he's so good at it and seems to take joy in doing it. Like the dude is not it. And then I just thought this was interesting because I missed this, I guess, on my other reads. He's trying to like discredit the whole thing, and he goes, when in history of Navarre have we ever flown a riot comprised of only blue dragons because of the blue dragon fire? And I was like, so do blue dragons have blue fire? Does that mean that green dragons have green fire and that red dragons have red fire and so on and so forth?
No, Violet goes on to even say, like, he does this because he knows not enough people got a long enough look at the paper. So that when he says, when would we ever have all blue dragons, they're going to think, like, oh, did it say blue dragons? I thought it said blue fire. But maybe it said blue dragons, and I was, you know, like, oh, that wouldn't make sense that we would have only blue dragons, that sort of thing.
Because the wyvern.
Yeah, because I get that they have blue fire.
Yeah.
He purposely misread it to make
Right.
them misremember what they read, because that was after he took the papers away.
Yeah.
Well, I also apparently misremembered what I read. So Markham
Well,
got me.
you know, got her.
You got Markham.
Markham. Dang it.
Oh, yes.
This is, my next note is not even from the notes I had in my Kindle. It's literally the text that I sent to Jon whenever Jack Barlow walked in the room. I just sent him, well. Called it, baby. I'm so back. Just like everybody's favorite psychopath, Jack Barlow.
Crazy.
He told me, he was like, text me when you finish this chapter. And I did.
Yeah.
That was exactly what I texted him. Well.
I can't believe of all the people who have died, that would be the one that you've decided is coming back.
That was crazy.
Well,
Is wild.
he was like, he's the only one that was built up to be a character. Like, it wouldn't have made sense for anyone else who died to
Yeah.
come back.
That line didn't help when he died, quote unquote, and Violet was like, the rocks come down the cliff in a fall that I know he can't survive.
Yeah, I know for a fact.
Yeah.
I think, like, yeah, even on that episode, it was like, prove it, though. Like, like what?
Show me the body. Is exactly
Oh, is
what he said.
that? Yeah.
Well, here it is, Kyle.
There it is.
Yep. Ended and back together.
In all its glory, am I right, ladies?
Ew, he's blonde, Kyle.
Grown men are not blonde.
And honestly, if there's one thing Jack Barlo wouldn't appreciate, it's a cozy, comfy vibe for reading. But we do, which is why Mood Reader Candles is an absolute must. Whether you're being thoroughly ruined by a shadow daddy, making terrible life choices for a winged warrior, or blushing over a spicy scene you definitely shouldn't read in public, there's a candle to match the mood. And because we love you, unlike certain possessive males, you can get 10% off your order with the code FRIENDS10 at checkout. FYI, this code doesn't apply to bundles or already discounted items, so go on, set the mood, light that flame, girl, and embrace the smut. Grab yours now at moodreadercandles.com.
All right, chapter 26. I'm the only one who wrote a note here, and I kind of only wrote it just so that there was a note here before chapter 26. Nice. But this is when Professor De Vera kind of gives her a little heads up that Zaden was injured. And this moment, Violet even says, like, please be the person who I think you are. You know, and she seems like one of the good ones. And Violet's kind of leaning towards that. So I was also, anything Violet thinks I'm totally there for because she's the best. So yay, Professor De Vera.
I will say, just in terms of some chapters maybe not having notes, I would excuse some of these because these are some of the shortest chapters I've encountered in this series so far. Yeah, it made me feel like I was booking it. I was like, oh man, flying by.
You were booking it.
Oh.
It's a book.
Wow.
Whoa, that's where that comes from.
He was actually kindling it.
Oh, yeah. Okay. It's not as catchy.
Rekindling.
Yeah, unless you're setting some on fire.
Hey, wow.
Chapter 27. This is whenever she gets to Samara and she's like feeling Taryn's feelings, or at least she says she is, and she can't like differentiate her own. She gets to Zaden and she's like, he smells like mint and leather and mine. For fuck's sake, am I scenting him? And I was like, girl, why is this the moment you're calling it out? Is it because she's acting like Taryn here, or like has his emotions and feelings? But like every character ever in any book, but specifically this one too, is always scenting things. And for some reason that throws her off here. I just thought that was funny.
I love it.
And then to keep on, what I just thought was hilarious in this moment was when Zaden is super annoyed. She's wearing Bodhi's jacket. First of all, super cute. We love a possessive boyfriend in this sense with the jacket. Hold on.
In a fictional sense.
In a fictional sense with a jacket that's used to fly on dragons. So, I'm a fan.
I did think this was so funny. I had this highlighted too because he literally stops mid-sentence when he notices it. He's like, who the fuck's flight jacket are you wearing? And she's like, seriously? That's your question right now? And then Zaden's jaw ticks. Cheers, everybody.
Yay.
Cheers.
Our first one. Oof.
My next one was just Zaden saying, you were worried about me? Because I thought it was funny, and all I could think of was the scene in SpongeBob where he's like, you like Krabby Patties, don't you, Squidward? Except it was just, you were worried about me, weren't you, Violet?
I didn't think Zaden SpongeBob was something that I needed, but
you know,
here for it.
Sponge Daddy.
They do go into the shower after this, so I mean,
this episode is sponsored by Scrub Daddy.
But for real, they do go into the shower and they get all clean. And if you want to know what happens here, go back and listen to the chapter recap with John's emojis. But I just can't help but think, you literally have a conversation with your sister, Mira, and you walk in to find Zaden. And then Mira is just sitting there with her friends or her coworkers or wherever she's at, all of a sudden having her sister's orgasmic lightning happening outside and all around. And everyone has to know what's happening or questioning what's happening or something. Like, what a weird position to be in, being the sister in that moment. But
she's probably used to it. I mean, growing up with her mom and the weather. Like,
oh, that is a good point.
Maybe that's why storms are comforting for Violet.
Yikes.
Orgasmic lightning, though. That sounds like a perfume name or something.
Yeah.
A new candle.
Yeah, maybe. Katie, are you listening?
Yeah, I can smell like, I don't know. Never mind.
No, go ahead. Finish the thought.
Describe
He's
it. Go ahead.
too going on.
Yeah.
Go on.
Never mind.
ideas.
Never mind. I had no good ideas.
Be a good name for an aphrodisiac energy drink. It's just like a 2 in 1.
Yeah. Yep.
Sure.
Oh my gosh. All right. Chapter 28. I just was chuckling at this conversation between Violet and Taryn because Taryn calls Zaden an emotional annoyance to Sigale or something. And she says, an emotional inconvenience? Is that what I am to you? And he says, you're currently a prize annoyance. I said, high praise from Taryn. And then they're landing and she says, that was abrupt. And he says, next time you fly and I'll ride. I just wrote such a dad. There's so many good dad lines from Taryn in this section.
There's so many good things from Taryn in this section. So this is when they're talking to the Drift, and Zaden is talking to Serena about the daggers, and there's just a girl to the right of her or the left of her, whichever one, and Violet's kind of like eyeing her as the girl eyes Zaden, and it's this whole moment, and then as they leave, Serena says, let's go, Catriona, and it was Zaden's ex-girlfriend the whole freaking time. What a moment.
Give a girl a warning, Zaden.
I know. And then the last line of the chapter is just Violet being like, the way she looked at him wasn't just longing, it was memory. Ooh, awkward.
And in chapter 29, that leads me to my next note, just highlighting the important information here. We learned that Violet has 2 ex-boyfriends.
Scandal.
Wow.
This is when she was explaining to Zaden that she left without leave. She said, yes, I ran out of battle brief the second Devera clued me in on that you'd been wounded. Yes, I left without leave. Initially, when Devera kind of like gave her the signal by itching her neck or whatever, before we found out later, I kind of thought that maybe Devera had played her here and had like acted like she gave a cue to her so she would leave and like get in serious trouble. Because even for a while when she gets there, before Zaden like brings up his sleeve and shows the scar, you think that that's what happened, that Devera maybe played her and that he was fine the whole time and wasn't wounded. So I'm glad that turned out the way it did with her like, okay, good. At least we get a good professor.
And sort of on the way back, Violet and Taryn are talking. Violet says, what is this feeling? Talking about what she's feeling for Catriona. Jealousy, anxiety, insecurity. And Taryn says, all 3. To which I will remind you that not a single dragon chose her. You were selected by 2. Pull yourself together. And I just wrote, thanks, Dad.
It's one of my favorite lines of his.
And Violet says, but at one point, Zaden chose her. And he comes back again with, at one point you thought gruel was a satisfactory meal until you grew some teeth and found the rest of the world's food waiting. Now cease this line of thinking. It does not serve to make you stronger. To which I wrote, thanks, Dad. That's pretty solid dad advice.
Now I'm just picturing Violet and Kat singing What Is This Feeling to each other.
Whenever they get back, she has some interactions with Professor Emetrio and just kind of left me feeling like he seems like a decent guy. Like we've not really seen him do anything bad before, but this is him explicitly sort of acting out of kindness to Violet. So he's on my good list for now.
Yes, this is a great interaction. I just had written like, man, maybe there's a good one in this sour bunch of professors. Like, finally, it was such like a sigh of relief, and their interaction was just kind of cute and fun. Like, he's like, if I had a favorite student, I would tell them, but I definitely don't. It was great.
Yeah, Lauren and I were talking about, like, I guess the professors that I thought were good or bad, and I apparently ruined her perception of Emetrio because, oh yeah, the guy who, like, teaches in the sparring was like, oh yeah, it's Emetrio. She's like, Kyle, don't do that. And I was like, I just want you to know, Lauren, that's how I pictured him from the very start, has been a dude in overalls with a red cap. Being like,
Mustache.
all right there, everyone. Partner her up.
It is pronounced Emeterio, if that helps, but I feel like that doesn't help.
It doesn't. I was too far gone the first time I read the name.
It still sounds just as Mario.
But then, going along that line, so does Kaori. He also, I mean, like, earlier and now came back with some real good notes. So another one with him, Emeterio, and Devera now being on the good list.
Yeah. Yeah, I wrote with Kaori, like, 2 good ones in the same section. I don't believe it. I was so excited.
Yeah, I loved that. I highlighted the line where Kaori turns to Varrish and he's like, oh no, I think you abuse your power in general. Because Varrish is like, are you accusing me of abusing my power in this specific area? And he's like, no, you're just the worst. Yeah. But I think, is Kaori the one that Brennan said was a good man or something? Do you remember that?
So.
I think that's right. I forgot
I think it
about
was
that.
Kaori. Yeah.
But I just don't know how much I trust Brennan, so.
Yeah, that's fair. I was just thinking, like, if it was one of those people who, like Brennan said, was actually a good person, because we hadn't really seen any of that until now.
Yeah.
This is toward the end of the conversation where Kaori and Varrish are kind of going back and forth. Varrish mentions that some writers don't bow to the whims of dragons, but that they actually influence their dragons. And Kaori's like, well, that's certainly a theory worth contemplating. Odd. Would that mean you influenced Solus when he set fire to that squad of bonded riders after Parapet? And then Varrish says, we're done here. I was like, oh my God.
Call them.
Like,
Got him.
this was such a crazy realization. Like, oh my gosh. And your immediate answer is like, yeah, definitely. Varrish did it. He definitely influenced it.
Is this the second time Kaori has done something like this to him? Or maybe this was the first in the section, but where Kaori shows up and is like, oh, well, I guess you haven't talked to Panchek yet.
Yeah.
Because blah, blah, blah. Like, I just love that Varrish likes to think that he is always ahead of everyone else, and then Kaori's like, no, you idiot.
Yep.
Like, we can all see what you're doing.
And I just appreciate that there are some professors, obviously we see this, but there are other adults that aren't just falling for his crap or just like taking it. They're actually standing up and trying to help the kids out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah. My only note from this whole entire thing, other than obviously the ones that you guys pointed out, but was just that it says Varrish has a greasy voice. Why is it gotta be greasy, and what does that sound like? Everyone? I need examples. Anyone?
Greasy
Anyone?
voice.
I listened to the audiobook for like the entire thing, so all I'm hearing is the way that Rebecca Soler narrates it.
Was
Give
it
us an
greasy?
example.
She does a great job with his voice, though, I think, just making him sound kind of like gross and terrible. But I don't know that I could give you like a greasy.
I feel like it's kind of weird because I want to go into a raspiness, but that to me is not greasy.
Agreed.
It would be like, I don't know, almost a cringy version of a smooth voice, like a smooth talking voice, but like.
Yeah.
It would be the guy from Moulin Rouge.
Oh, no.
Lieutenant?
He is greasy.
Yeah, that's him, bro.
That's exactly what that is.
You owe me some new slippers. Good jokes, everyone. Anyway, my next note is, yay, Rhiannon's powers have grown. She's so good at Accio-ing. She Accio'd a dagger through the wall. You guys remember?
I know, but it's actually really cool.
It
It's
is.
kind of nice.
Yeah.
It is cool.
And then Violet tells all of them that it's for killing Venom, which I am equally excited and scared that the squad knows.
Yeah.
And then how they reacted to all of it is literally the best, especially Reed.
Yeah.
And just like, you should be mad and all these things and all her feelings that she's feeling towards Zaden. And instead they're like, no, like,
Yeah.
you're our best friend. We
Yeah.
care about you. And she's like, oh, that's how I should have handled it.
Oh, that's a healthy
Cool.
relationship. Got it.
Yep.
And moving into chapter 30, this is Riddick coming in strong again. This is when they're talking about the books that they're looking for. He knows that there are journals from the first 6 somewhere in the archives, and he says, wait, do I actually know something about the archives that you don't? I do, don't I? And I had to put LOL here. It was just like really, really funny with that.
I loved this because it's just like the scene from National Treasure, which is so random. But Riley in National Treasure, there's a scene where like he says something and they look at him like, what? And he says, I know something about history that you don't know. And he's just like sitting with that knowledge for a second. And they're like, Riley. And he's like, sorry, I just need to enjoy this.
It's
I'm like, this
exactly
is
like
Riddick.
that.
1000%.
Well, and then they're trying to like make a plan and what they should do. Sawyer says, well, if it means we get to spend time in the archives, I'm in. He nods enthusiastically. And then Riddick grins and claps him on the back and says, and we all know why, my friend. And I'm like, why, Sawyer? Eyes emoji. And I have more notes on that later.
Sweet little baby Sawyer.
Sawyer.
Okay.
Wow. The Dockmaster is back.
I've got it.
goes on to say, sort of talking about like the new pact to stay together. He's like, the four of us stick together. That's the deal. We make it to graduation no matter what. And I wrote, Riddick, I swear to Dune, if you jinx anyone in this group, I'll kill you myself. Because you basically just said, yeah, we're all making it.
Yep.
It was
Kyle, I'm so glad you care that much.
a minor red flag. And then Sawyer sort of immediately comes back with, if there's a Basgiath to graduate from. And I was like, valid point. And something I used to say about my own college all the time, because I felt like it was like 1 year away from being like, we're out of money.
Yeah, that's valid.
fair.
That is so valid for where we went to school.
It is.
Sometimes what I say about our own kids is like, I mean, who knows, 12 years college may not be a thing anymore, honestly.
Yeah. I mean,
And then her talking about how she was avoiding Jack Barlo, who is weirdly nice to everyone at all costs. And I was like, oh, I kind of called that too, because I said he'd just be walking around all sort of like smiling at everyone and stuff. I mean, here I feel like he said like, oh, it's, my second chance or whatever, but still weird.
You did call that.
it is weird. Yeah.
Weird that he's doing it and weird that you called it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Pretty nuts.
Pretty nuts.
Pretty nuts.
I have a quick God's Watch at the end of this chapter. I will also say I was on God's Watch a lot in Throne of Glass. This series, it doesn't seem to be very prevalent, but we're keeping notes anyway, because sometimes there are things like this where it comes up, and in this case, they're at threshing, and Violet's like watching out for Sloane. She's looking for Sloane, and in italics, like in her own head, it says, "I'll find time to get to Temple if you could just be with her. I promise, Dune, the goddess of war." So we don't really see her ever go to the temple. They don't really talk about the temples or like praying to these gods necessarily. It's usually just mentioned in passing. So this was interesting that she like speaks to Dune sort of here.
Yeah.
Then we find out that Sloane bonds a red dagger tail just like her brother. That made me a little teary-eyed.
I like that it's described as the shade of strawberry. That's so
Aw,
cute.
That is cute.
To me, it almost made it a lot less threatening, because I could just pick like a bright red dragon. I was like, that's kind of like cutesy strawberry color, I guess, but yeah, sure.
It's like Clifford, the big red dragon.
When I think red dragon, I think like blood red, not like, oh, that's like a Hello Kitty dragon.
Strawberry red.
It's my little dragon.
And moving into chapter 31, Aya's dead. And that's half of us who flew into Resin.
Wow, what a transition.
I mean, when this happened, I assumed that the infantry guys were going up just to go after Aya, and Violet just happened to show up at the same time. Obviously, it would have been nice for her to save Aya, but that's not how it worked out. But
It could have been the other way around too. Like they were there for Violet and Aya just hadn't left yet.
True.
Or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they said they had a message for both of them, didn't they, when they came in?
I
don't know.
They said they had a message, but I can't remember who the message was directed
Yeah,
to.
before Sheila's like, let me guess.
Yeah.
What if they were just like, no, not at all. We were going to tell you that there's pizza downstairs, weirdo. But Jack saves her from falling off the ledge. Still a bit suspicious of Jack. Obviously, we don't know the whole story. But I'm kind of like in the middle of wondering if he's playing some sort of game or if he's just a pawn in someone else's.
I have a question for you actually on that.
Shoot.
Do you think that he was like completely mended? Like 100% back to himself? You know what I mean?
I feel like, okay, I am sticking to my he almost died at least and drew power from the earth. So I don't know if it was like something where they're like,
okay.
Oh my gosh, he's like part venom, or he turned venom, and maybe they found a way to heal venom out of people somehow, but I don't think he's completely healed in that respect.
I actually like that take, because my guess was that maybe Nolan was trying to cure a venom. So maybe it was like he did use some of that to save himself, but it was little enough for a mender to come in and cleanse that from their soul, since it says that like... whatever it does to their soul.
Because that's why, like,
Yeah.
I said in the last one, I was like, I'd be surprised if someone we like knew and cared about didn't become venom in some respect. Because like Jack, no one really cared. Like at this point in the story, who cares? But if it was like anyone else, I'll get into it a little bit later. if they became venom, and then they also found out that Jack was at least partially, then they could be like, oh, but it's possible to like mend them back instead of giving up on them. Very similar to an apocalypse where it's like, oh, you have a zombie bite, but like we'll hang around with you until you turn, but like there's possible we could find a cure.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I like that too, especially since Nolan literally said that it's hard work to mend a soul. So
because there could be something with her and maybe Brennan. She'll be like, oh, they did it back at the college, so you could do it here, sort of thing. But who knows? These two know, but we don't.
Yep.
To me, it's wild that this is the conversation and the speculation when you're reading these books back to back, because reading them so far apart and just living with this hatred towards Jack Barlo and this like, praise God he's dead kind of feeling. And then for him to just casually walk back into class, like, I was just so shocked. So shocked by the fact that that's like even a possibility that like, any theories and speculation about anything to do with him was so out the window.
I honestly, like, coming from the perspective of, like, I would be the kid in class that would raise my hand. I was like, I'm sorry, so he has to do none of what we did for the past 6 months? Like, he's just getting the bye week on that one?
His homework.
Yeah, and he's all of a sudden in a second year or whatever.
Like, Sawyer sitting there like, I had to do everything over again. I'm sorry. Like, can we...
That's an amazing point.
Poor Sawyer.
Aw.
Very valid.
Like, I get that you still have a dragon, man, but there's a lot of stuff you miss.
Dang,
Oh my
that is an
gosh.
amazing point. So Riddick comes up and helps Violet kind of get out of the rest of that situation with being dead and her telling him about Jack saving him and all that kind of stuff. And Riddick was going to the archives, and he says that there is a place underground in the archives for them to go, but there are wards. Jasenia knows how to get through them too, but the bad news is that we will need someone from King Tori's bloodline to do it. And then Violet says, well, then it's a good thing we have access to a prince who happens to hate his father. And I was like, ooh, yeah, Aric, get ready to go. It's about time. You've just been sitting here at the college. We're like, what are you doing here, bro? Here it is. Here is your moment. So excited.
And then rolling right into chapter 32, in the first sentence, a muscle in Zaden's jaw ticks once, twice.
Ooh,
double drinkies.
Double drinkies. Kyle just took a drink out of his straw cup and a can at the exact same
That was
time.
harder to do than I thought it would be.
What were the 2 drinks you just mixed?
That was just watered down Coke in the end.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. That's not bad.
Right, yeah.
No, I'm sorry. This was a full glass of Jack and a little bit of Coke.
Kyle's playing the game tonight.
Oh, yeah. This is their moment. Zaden says, you know they'll kill us if we're caught, right? And Violet just thinks us. It's like literally a sentence by itself. And I just wrote, where are we? They had their where are we moment.
That's so cute. They're going to last forever.
My next note here is when they are preparing to go into the vault, still going through the rows and rows of books. They haven't made it to like the little secret door or whatever yet. So they're all in disguise. This is from Violet's perspective. It says, Zaden disappears the moment we cross the threshold, sticking to the shadows along dimly lit walls. I can just see the vague outline of his shape if I look closely, but it's almost shocking how well he blends into the darkness. And I loved this description. I was like, I have a newfound intrigue for his power now. We've never really heard it described like this. It was really only in like an attacking or threatening way or completely like envelop an area in darkness. But this is dope. Like after this description, I feel like his power has tied my interest for Violet's.
Nice.
It's up there.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
For me, it's like every time we've heard the word shadows mentioned, I just assume Zaden knows what's happening because of that. But I've never really thought that maybe he's literally standing there in the shadows. Like, you know, it's not just the shadows whispered to him somehow, but like he's literally standing there listening in on whatever's going on. So that's kind of cool. But Aric does not like Zaden and is kind of has this back and forth that maybe he won't help. But it said, turns out the key to securing Aric's participation was noting that he'd be stealing from his father. And he hates his dad, which is whatever, that's his own daddy issues that he has to figure out. But for me, sometimes I keep thinking that the king is just kind of a figurehead, being that all the information comes to Basgiath, and then whatever they choose gets to the king. And maybe the king doesn't actually know what's going on, and he's just kind of living some bougie life, or is he an active participant in what's going on? And we don't know anything about him. And so the fact that Aric hates him so much, I just want to know more their relationship, but also just what is the king's involvement in everything? Him and Melgren, but like this obviously specific moment about the king. So
They also talk about the archives being warded with the ultimate pest protection, and there's like a whole lot more as we go into these chapters about them being like, we need to get out of here or we are going to die when the doors close from the way the wards work. And I was just thinking the whole time, I was like, well, it couldn't be like fire or water or anything that would damage the books, but they obviously like evacuate the whole place. So I'm like, the only thing I could think of is like vacuum sealing itself somehow with magic and literally like taking all the air out of the place to where if you were stuck in there, it's like you're just in basically the void of space and you die from asphyxiation. But I don't know if we ever find that out, but that's what I think it would do.
Yeah. That was kind of my initial guess as well. With like humidity and temperature based as well, or something like that. Like obviously very controlled environment in there.
Right.
yeah, I was a little annoyed they never tell us straight out what it is. They just keep being like, or we'll die. I was like, but how?
Yeah. It's like
we just will die.
It's just another one of the college's lies. Somebody gets stuck in there like, oh, I'm fine.
See, that also crossed my mind, that what if it was just a lie? But that's a weird one to lie about. But I guess, I don't know, so is the fact that there's, venom.
Any of the other lies they tell,
Yeah. 100%. But Aric ends up pulling Violet in, and she's helping search the books. And while she's in disguise as a scribe. And she catches Zaden just kind of looking at her weird. And he says, I feel like I'm looking at what could have been. And she's like, and he goes, you look better in black. And I was like, oh, yeah, she does. Girl in leather.
I'm surprised he didn't say something like, you look better with your clothes on the floor or something like that.
Oh,
that's true. But I think there's people around. I think he says this out loud. I don't think it's in their mind.
Well, yeah. That's
It would just be another one of those things that everyone's like, yeah, that's not a secret. We already know that.
It's true.
Into chapter 33, it really bugged me that the room was described as 6 bookshelves and a few cabinets, and it took them 30 freaking minutes to look for it. And I was like, you need the Dewey Decimal System or something, because this should not take this long. It said the shelves were twice as high as Aric, but that's like 10, 11 feet max. It's easily scannable. Like you could just look up and down. I don't know. 6 bookshelves, 30 minutes. Come on, 2 people?
So my assumption is that these are like the journals that they carried around with them. So I'm assuming there's no labels on the binding or anything like that. I'm like assuming they're just unmarked on the outside and possibly written in different languages, since at least Lyra and Warwick's we know are in Old Lucerish. And they like just recently-ish made Navarian the common language. So like if all of these people from different scribes and ranks and stuff were like from different areas, they might have all been written in different languages, which would explain like I feel like trying to pull them out and look through them.
Yeah, but then again, there were books with names. Not that they all were, but I guess to that point, I feel like as someone who knows books, you would know what a journal looks like versus like a published book,
right?
Or like a history or something.
Yeah, but
like
she was looking for the handwritten ones. She even
right.
said that. Like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
so
if you know the difference.
Through. Maybe these are like the original ones handwritten, and then upstairs is all the like transcribed by, and that's the published ones. And then
right, like in the actual
blah, blah, blah.
archives.
Yeah. So like because she mentioned a few titles. You were picturing those as like manuscripts
the
more
original,
than books.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I do have a question about Old Lucerish. Does that mean there's a Lucerish and then Old Lucerish, or is Old Lucerish what they're calling it because now everyone speaks the regular language, and that's like, oh, the old like what we used to say, But
I think it's,
or is there 2 Lucerishes?
I think there's Old Lucerish.
Does this make sense?
New Lucerish, just like we have Old English and New English.
I I don't think they say that about, like, Tirish, though.
Well, we don't say that about Russian.
But I guess...
Well, I don't know if there is an old Russian and a new Russian, but we definitely say it about English is all I know.
Yeah. Or maybe Old Loose Sarish was a dead language before everything else that happened. I don't know. But I think it's the only one that's referred to that way. I don't think any of the other... Yeah.
I don't know.
It's also the one that's more rare, it seems like, for people to be able to read or speak.
Yeah.
Because it's been out the longest or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. But it is also interesting to know from this scene that every commanding general has kept personal journals. Because we've gotten, like, some little excerpts and stuff.
Yeah.
And we've joked about people keeping diaries that don't seem like they're diary type of people.
Which means Zaden will never be a general, because he has flat out said he does not keep a journal. So...
Would that be the disqualifier?
Yeah. It's kind of like going to art school and then losing your portfolio and trying to get a job. And they're like, well, where's your portfolio? And you're like, oh, I don't have it. And they're like, well, then you don't have a job, do you?
As someone who went to art school, that's exactly how that goes.
That's what happened to my art teacher in high school. He lost his portfolio and then he had to teach PE for like so many years until he made up a portfolio to actually prove
it wasn't digital, probably.
Yeah, nothing was saved or anything. Like, he had to make his own new portfolio to, like, put towards a new whatever. I don't know how it all works, but he taught PE forever. And then one day he was the art teacher, and I was like, what are you doing here?
Is that how you said it?
Yes.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, that's honestly tragic. I hate putting a portfolio together, even digitally. I had to do physical ones when I was in school, and I hated it. It was the worst. I probably would have taught PE forever.
I was always suspicious of him. I was like, wow, this sketch of our scrimmage is beautiful. Is that hatch work, man? Come on.
The shape.
Oh my gosh. Okay. My next note from this section was that I'm just like loving Aric for being so chill about this whole rebellion. They're acting like he should be shocked or like they're waiting for some big response from him. And he's talking to Violet like, why would I hate you? Your parents led a righteous rebellion. And from what I can tell, you're just trying to do the same. I hate Zaden for killing my brother. Just like, he seems so chill about all of it. And I love it.
What are the facts?
I think he says that to Imogen because Violet's parents did not lead a righteous rebellion.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Typed that in wrong. You are correct.
But in response to that, in Violet's head, Zaden says, Alec deserved it. He was a bully and forfeited his life by coming after Garrick during threshing, though I wonder who it was that told Aric, since if his father knew, I highly doubt I'd still be in possession of my head. And so I had said in a previous episode, when we get that little bit about Garrick being bullied during threshing, that I want to know more information about that. And so now we get a tiny little bit that it's by Alec, who is prince, and I would think at that time the oldest prince that we know. So he would have been literally next in line for the crown. And then Zaden literally kills him. So there's a lot more to that story that I need to know now.
Yeah.
Even more than before. And instead, this is all we get. So
I need to know the other siblings' names because those are far too similar. Alec.
Well, Aric isn't his real name. His real name is Cam.
Oh, that's true.
Cam, yeah. But I was about to say, this is even, I feel like this makes his fake name even funnier because like Greycastle seemed so made up, but then being Aric when his brother's name is Alec, you're like, hello.
Oh, okay.
That's why she's like, did you just come up with that?
Yeah, she's like, that's terrible.
He came up like, Rick? He just wanted Rick. Aric? That's weird.
Rick. That's funny. But we were talking about the list of tomes, and they list out like a whole bunch of them. But the one that really caught my eye was the mythology of the gods. And it's just, we've talked about God's Watch a little bit and just some of the things that like we don't understand how that works. And I would love to read that one or get to know a little bit more of that one. But instead she's like, listing, this important title, listing. And I was like, no, go back.
I missed that one. Dang it.
I would too. Specifically, I thought it was interesting because of the word mythology, because if this is an old book about the gods, you don't really call your religion mythology unless you don't believe in the gods.
It's a great.
Right?
So I was kind of like, do they have current gods, or are they more like how we would refer to Norse mythology, how we're like, oh, Thor and Odin, and like there's not very many people who like truly believe in that pantheon anymore, and I wonder if they're closer to that with their gods, or if I mean, they still refer to Malik and Dune and stuff, but it might just be more like a, thank Malik or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back with Taryn being like, with your puny gods or whatever that scene was.
But I guess she refers to Dune's temple, too. I would think it's somewhat believed.
Somewhat relevant.
Even though she doesn't go except for Christmas and Easter, apparently, because we never see her go.
Christmas and Easter. Yeah, she's one of those.
to the God of War's temple on Christmas.
Oh my God. That is really funny. Sorry. Dang it. That made me lose my train of thought.
Sorry.
I don't know. I lost it, but it was important. But that's okay. That was just so funny. Oh, I know. But if everyone, their whole entire history and world was rewritten, 600 years ago, 400 years ago, whichever one it was, who's to say this is also not part of that?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Literally anything could be made up that she believes as a core thing in her being. So
that's true.
I don't know. Just the word mythology. I didn't think of it like that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so chapter 34. This is back with Sawyer. So this is them getting out of the archives and they're collecting all their things. They're taking off their robes and they're passing the books and who gets the right things and all this stuff. And Sawyer says he shouldn't remember much. I hit him from behind, talking about the guard that's laying there in front of the archives. And he says he's stuffing robes into a large cream laundry bag. Violet has to translate for Jesinia, and she says, I'll just berate him for falling asleep, she signs back, offering Sawyer a smile, and I translate it. And then he blinks, pausing for a long second before taking the last robe. Ooh, Sawyer, love me so in love. Ooh, I can't wait. Oh,
got a new ship, everybody.
Love it. I am so here for it. I approve. Sawyer and Jesinia. But it is interesting that I think Sawyer is the first person we meet who can't sign. Or that's straight out that she has to translate. Nobody says he can't do it. She's just translating for him. As where everyone else can just magically kind of do that we've seen so far, at least all the marked ones or anyone else we've really seen communicating with her other scribes. So big inconvenience for Sawyer there. If you're gonna be the one guy who can't do it, that's who you're going to choose to love. But that's okay. You can figure that out. You can learn.
Don't underestimate the importance of body language.
Thanks, Ursula.
So after they leave the archives, Violet tells Rhiannon to go ask for Dyer in the healer's quadrant. And I wrote, life debt. Nice. I forgot that this is a thing that happened. So when they initially call him life debt, I was expecting that to be, a much bigger thing at some point later, but I just got so excited when I saw his name. That's true. It is a big thing here.
It saves Aric and all of them, kind of, when they go check people's hands.
Yeah, that's true. But I was got excited when I saw his name. But then also a moment for Quinn projecting as Violet and Rhiannon. That is crazy to me. And she's we saw in book 1, so she would have been a second year, right? At the time that she could project as herself, from a distance away. But then for her to be in her 3rd year projecting as 2 other people at once, having a conversation throughout wherever. But I'm how just the implication of how crazy this could be over the course of her lifetime. If she's only in her 3rd year and she continues to develop this signet and it's already come that far in 2 years, it's just that's mind blowing to me.
I did think it was interesting that she says to Imogen, but I just can't get the shade of your pink hair right or something.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder if, is that going to come up later? She tries to be Imogen and they're
wrong
your
pink.
hair. Wasn't it a little pinker 2 seconds ago or something like that?
It's looking a little Pepto today.
And then Quinn talking about it and stuff, she says, my signet is stronger because Kruth, I believe that's her dragon, was my great aunt's dragon, but she's not a direct descendant, so I don't have to worry about going mad like those whose dragons spawn in a direct familiar line. Dragons aren't supposed to get even close to family lines for that exact reason. They'll listen to human rules and kind of rolls her eyes about it. But anytime that stuff kind of gets brought up and it's oh yeah, I forgot that's a thing, and Zaden has his granddad's dragon, so it makes me nervous for Zaden. I don't know.
Yep.
Why do we got to bring that up? I don't like it.
Yeah, that is interesting. And didn't we talk about this before because his grandfather was the one who like didn't make it through the quadrant or something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So maybe their
Yeah,
bond
I
wasn't
know.
strong and Zaden will be fine.
Yeah. And Fenn wasn't a writer.
No, he was infantry.
Yeah. Interesting. But then Zaden's jaw ticks, so
Oh.
drink up, everybody.
Thanks, I needed a drink. Thanks, Zaden.
Thanks, Zaden. And then Zaden tells Violet, "You are astonishing." And I'm blushing, and I love the way he hypes her up. It's the best.
And this is after they come out of the archives. Zaden and Violet are walking. They're kind of headed toward the dorms, but then they kind of split off. Like, Zaden takes one of the books, and he bolts ahead to give it to Brennan, and she's heading back to her dorm by herself. As she's walking back, she says, "For the first time in months, it's hope coursing through my veins instead of dread. We can do this. We're doing this. We have a first-hand account of how the first 6 activated their ward stone." And she's just like recounting, like, "Oh man, we got all this hope." And my first thought was, "Where's the poop, Robin?" Because I know the other shoe's about to drop. I didn't expect it to be so quick here, like literally on her way back to the room. And then she runs into Nolan.
My favorite part about this is you were reading it.
Yeah, what did I say?
You couldn't remember the quote from How I Met Your Mother. That's what that quote's from. And he was like, "What does she say? Where's the shoe, Robin?"
Where's the shoe? That was amazing. I didn't remember that quote until I read it, and then it just like brought it all back, and very funny.
I never seen it, so
No.
sorry, everybody.
Lame.
Anyway,
We'll be back. We'll go watch all 9 seasons.
Pause.
Hold.
Perfect.
We'll be right back.
Nolan comes up and offers her a little drinky drink, and she says, "That's too kind of you," lifts the mug and drinks deeply. And I was like, earlier I was so proud of you for not... Did we learn nothing? I thought we learned something, but I guess we learned nothing.
In her defense here, Nolan, the last time she saw him, did help her escape.
And it is lemonade, which is delicious.
Good point. Should have started with that.
Well, and Nolan's been mending her like most of her life. So this is someone that she does
Yeah, it's
trust,
just-
especially, after he helped them escape. But I had
She
the same
had that
thought.
with Markham, too.
Yeah, just be on your
That's
highest
very
of
true.
guards from now on.
Very true. And I remember on my first read being so confused why the hell Nolan brought her lemonade. Like, why is he carrying lemonade around just to like offer it to her? And then it literally wasn't until this reread that I noticed Quinn said while she was astral projecting, she was talking about needing lemonade because they were drinking.
Oh.
And I just never put that together. But on the first read, I was like, why lemonade? Like, this is so random.
And moving into chapter 35, get the pre-chat blurb here that I had to
Pre-chat.
highlight. Pre-chat?
Pre-chat.
Had to highlight this. It says, "The only signet more terrifying than an intrinsic is a truth sayer, and yet we let them live." And I was like, what is that? What? Really made me excited and interested and intrigued when I read that.
Yeah.
I just had, whenever Liam shows up, I just wrote, "What are you doing here?"
What are you doing?
Liam,
And the whole time, like,
you're always welcome.
yeah, I was just like, all right, well, he just hung
on
around
in.
for a while, I guess, but it's whatever.
Oh, I knew this chapter was coming. This made me cry on my first read.
It made me cry today. I read this morning.
I'm crying right now. But I threw in like a little God's Watch note, sort of. Violet says to Liam, "You're not really here. You're a hallucination from pain and dehydration, a mirage." And he says, maybe Malik sent me as a kindness. And then in her head, I guess, I think this is all in italics, she says, "Malik doesn't do kindness, nor does he allow souls to wander about."
Well, and he responds with, "I'm not wandering, Violet. I'm exactly where I need to be." Liam, why do you gotta show up? I swear Rebecca only was like, what could I put here that's just gonna wreck everyone's life? I'll bring Liam back. Not for real life like Jack. Just a little bit and make everyone cry. Like, Freaking Rebecca. You're
Just
ripping my
enough to
heart
be
out.
Sad. Yes. Oh, and then Liam's jaw flexes, and I was like, cheers, and I put a crying emoji.
But I'm like, we should pour one out
Hallucinatory.
instead. I don't feel like I can drink for... we got to pour one out. If you're outside listening to this, pour one out for Liam. Or if you're near your sink, if you're doing your dishes. So that's what
Nancy
said.
pour one out for Liam.
If you're doing dishes, pour one out for Liam, please. Really, whatever you're doing right now.
Oh, okay. But then in Violet's POV, I think this is because Varrish is like expecting Zaden to show up. And in her POV, she thinks Zaden won't come. He'll choose the safety of the revolution. And I was like, girlfriend, he's literally told you the exact opposite to your face. I think more than once.
Yeah.
We're just living in denial here, I guess. Okay.
Well, and Liam is there actively telling her the opposite. Like, not just... It's not even just a memory of Zaden. Like, Liam is there being like, no, like, he'll be here. Like, just give us 10 minutes.
My next note, I didn't put the whole thing in because I wasn't too sure about it, but I had a wild throwaway theory sort of thing. So Varish's signet, he says, he's like, I don't see people, I see their weakness. It's a great advantage in battle. Blah, blah, blah. She surprised him because he's like, oh, I expected to see your bones, or like, you know, wanting your mom to love you or something. He's like, but I didn't see anything. You shield well or whatever. Later on, he says, oh, you see it now, don't you? I'm sure you think he's indestructible, but let me assure you, I was lucky enough to glimpse the most powerful rider of your generation fumble his shields like a novice once. It was for less than a second, but that was all I needed to see what it would take to shatter him. So, that with the other information we know, was Naolin the most powerful rider of his time with his, like, ability to take other people's abilities and, you know, what I forget what they called his ability. But Taryn's older rider, right? Would that have been him? Because I feel like that would be enough for if his shields went down and Varrish or his dragon took him down, that would be a reason why Taryn has beef with Solus and like took out an eye once because he killed his rider.
Interesting.
Wait, are you saying that Varrish killed Naolin?
Yeah, or his dragon.
Or hurt Brennan, that Naolin.
Yeah, or something like that. Like he found a way
okay.
to do that. Because I feel like that would be a good reason for Taryn to be like, that's the past beef they have. You know?
And we don't
I
speak
could
of the
see
one
that.
who was before, so we don't know
Yeah.
any information about it. Naolin is the most powerful, maybe was the most powerful person of Brennan's generation or whatever, but like isn't Zaden the one until Violet potentially takes over or whatever? Isn't that what everybody says?
I mean, the most powerful rider of your... what do they mean by your generation? Because, like, they're 4 years apart. It's not, like, a huge, you know...
Yeah, that's a good point, but they
Yeah.
also always, I feel like, reference Zaden for that.
I guess. But he said, like...
I don't know.
He was able to, like, at that time, they were the most powerful or whatever. I don't know. It was just a theory that I had where it's like, that'd be a good reason for Taryn to take out Solus's eye. That's a good, like...
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
If
Yeah, I have not been on Solus Taryn beef watch.
I really wasn't until I read that.
Yeah, they're John, don't make that face. I meant
The new
you
beef
know,
watch.
like their drama.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I really wasn't until he said that. I was like, I feel like that's a pertinent information. This guy's literally saying that he took down the most powerful writer. And, like, that should be well-known information about who like, the most powerful writers were at any given time. But
Yeah, I didn't put that together. That could be. If Varrish was like the reason that whatever was happening, what is going on?
she's still laughing about Beef Watch.
I said beef watch.
I thought something new happened.
No.
No, it's just funny. I was
Still
trying to
beef
defend
watch.
myself for so much of it, and then it's like, now I'm post that, and it's just registering what I said. So I'm fine. I'm crying, but I'm fine.
And I wouldn't have thought much of it if he didn't, like, die pretty soon after this. I was like, oh, well, we're not going to get that
Right.
information now.
Yeah.
Because we don't know, like, what's
That doesn't
happened
mean
with
Solus died.
Yeah, I know. We don't know what happened to him. But
Yeah.
I'm sure it's nothing great.
Taryn says that he lost him in the tunnels
Yeah.
of under a mountain or something.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate knowing that Taryn was trying to chase him down.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like,
Yes.
if Taryn would have killed the dragon, then Varrish would have also
Yeah.
died. Wherever. So, Anyways, I just didn't really like, first of all, Varrish is a person, but while he's talking to Violet here in this moment, he's just like casually skimming his fingers across the obvious break in her arm and just acting like that's a normal thing, and he's just weirdly caressing her broken arm, and just do not like that guy. But I love Violet's line to him where she says, I might die in this chamber, but I promise you will. I'm like, oh yes, girl, things in the get him. Yeah.
So on my first read of Iron Flame, I think this was the part that made me cry when Violet tells Liam not to leave her, and he says, I won't, I swear. And it's giving I Go Where You Go from book 1, and it made me a little emotional this time. I didn't cry here, but I did cry my very next note.
Not here, but here.
Not here. It wasn't for Liam. It was this moment. I guess this was just like, I feel like emotions were just so high in the audiobook, and I was just like really into this moment. This scene where Violet is like pulling Dain through her memories, where she's trying to intentionally show him like what she wants him to see instead of just letting him like Google search through her memories. And it's sorry.
Does it work that way? Because I thought he just saw recent memories. So like, can he just search whatever he wants?
Varrish tells him like focus on the word whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, she's trying to like pull him through her memories, and then here where it says, I stop pulling Dain and start shoving, screaming both physically and mentally, filling my head with every ounce of pain that's been inflicted upon me in the last 4 days. And this was just like this paragraph as she's doing this at the end of this like very emotional sequence just got me, and this is a cry count for me. I cried here.
Well, mine was immediately following that, where she shows all the stuff about Liam, like you said, but Liam says, it's still been my honor. I'm here, and I don't regret it, Vi, not 1 second. I was like, Liam, don't say it's been my honor again. I cried when you said that the first time. And I cried here, too.
Oh.
She got me to cry for Liam twice.
I know.
Both times, too. So
and
4
it
times.
happens every time, yeah.
I had to fix my notes there. I put Dain stabs Atos, which doesn't happen. He doesn't stab himself.
He stabs himself.
Darn.
Dain stabs Varrish, and I just wrote in my Kindle, oh yeah, it's a redemption arc. And I just put the little picture of Kronk, but like, oh yeah, it's all coming together.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together. My next note was the end of this chapter, and boy, do I have something for you guys. Maybe you won't be as excited as I was. It's the line where they're headed out. Nora's at the door, right? Dain says, like, let us through and you'll live or something like that. And somebody comes up behind her and slits her throat. From Violet's point of view, it says, I look up into the wrath of Dune in the form of gold-flecked onyx eyes. And let me tell you, when this sent me, because I never remember getting this description of Zaden's eyes. So when I'm sorry, I don't know.
What?
I don't know. I don't ever remember reading it. Maybe I just glossed over it.
100 times you glossed over.
How dare you
100,
gloss in
please.
this book?
Think of every single time she's talked about Zaden and his looks.
Mostly
and
his
it's always
biceps.
like,
Never his eyes. Maybe
I'm
twice
sorry
before.
that you're an arms and abs guy, but as someone who apparently paid attention to his eyes, it's a lot.
I'm not
Doing a
sorry
search
I'm
now.
in arms and
Continue.
abs.
Yeah. You do book 2 and I'll do book 1.
I will bet you total it will be less than 8.
Can we wager on this? Like,
Are
real
we
money or
looking for
something?
eyes or specifically gold-flecked onyx eyes?
I would say gold flecked, and hopefully that'll bring it up. Anyway,
Yeah, go ahead.
while you guys are looking for that, I thought that this was Andarna, and like
Ooh,
that she
that'd be
like
cool.
somehow woke up from her dreamless sleep and she could somehow take human form, and that she followed the bond down here. And like when I tell you, this completely sent me into a spiral. And then when I realized it was Zaden, I was like honestly quite disappointed.
Yeah,
that it
I
wasn't
could
Andarna.
I could see how you would be with that thought. Like, oh, okay, well.
And it took me a second to kind of catch up to that. But I was like, we talked about this quite a bit last night, and I was just like, Man, what a fanfic that would be for her to come out of the dreamless sleep and be able to just transform.
Yeah. While they're,
oh man,
I guess looking through, is the eye search done, or do you guys need another minute?
It happens once in this section in chapter 22.
I did happen to catch that looking back through.
Yeah,
Not again
in
this
the
book.
depths of his gold-flecked onyx eyes. But that is the only mention I'm finding of it in Iron Flame
Oh, booyah.
so far.
Oh, well.
I mean, I feel like she says it literally all the time, but maybe it's more in the
remuted
second half
yourself,
of
just
Iron
so you know,
Flame.
Lauren. Oh, okay, cool.
She's counting.
Do you have any theories while she's counting about, and Darna's like, surely the signet's going to be different?
Oh, about like what power she's going to get
Yeah.
from her? I don't know. Like,
I've been mulling over it.
it's either going to be something like crazy rare, or I would think it would have to be something like pretty dang powerful
Yeah.
if she's sleeping this long. But then again, I have like a small theory about why she could be sleeping so long, which I have at the end. But
Yeah, I've got a little bit of it at the end too. I just didn't know if you were postulating any theories in your brain.
Okay, from book 1, unless I'm counting wrong, because I just did this very fast, there are 10 mentions of gold flecked and 11 mentions of onyx in like a certain pair of onyx eyes, or there's no lie in his onyx eyes, that kind of a thing.
interesting.
So that would be 21 potential times to make some sort of connection from book 1 at least.
Well, I
to
missed it.
Zaden.
So
But yeah, to be fair, it's only been mentioned once so far in Iron Flame.
Twice.
And the first time is in
Until
page
this point.
34, which would be the very first time she meets Zaden, and his first description ever. So how dare you forget?
Yeah. How dare you?
His very first description months ago when you read that.
My only note about this was in parentheses, God's watch. It's the wrath of Dune in his eyes.
Good point. Well, what if it was the actual god too? That would have been cool. Anyways.
Just Dune shows up.
Yeah, he's pissed.
Everybody gets one.
dare you.
Disappears.
Well, chapter 36 starts with him saying, "There's nowhere in existence you could go that I wouldn't find you, remember?" Oh, so cute. Zaden and your little gold flecked eyes. Those onyx depths.
never gonna live it down.
It's been literally one note later.
Welcome to my life, Jon.
My next note here, this is when Varrish is still like bleeding out, basically. Says he groans and their heads whip around in his direction. And speaking to Dain, Varrish says, "You're turning traitor?" He accuses Dain as he struggles to his feet, still holding his wound in his side. I was like, "Oh, baby, let's fug this guy up, baby. Let's do something." I was ready. I was ready for some wrath, something. I was ready for it.
The wrath of Dune.
Wrath of Dune. Wrath of Dain.
Nice.
And then Dain says, "If my father already knows what Violet showed me, then I'm the one disappointed in him." And I was like, yes, Dain, okay. But then instead of Dain getting his vengeance from this like quick turnaround moment, Zaden stops him and says, "That honor belongs to Violet if she wants it." And my note is all caps, snaps for Zaden. Sounds like rain. Ooh, sassy snaps.
And then we have the moment from Violet's perspective. "I memorized the look on Varrish's face as the life fades out of him, just so I can reassure myself that he's literally dead when the nightmares inevitably come." Maybe this is a hot take, but I am so incredibly disappointed with this death.
Kind of was
He's
too.
dead, or how fast it the
No,
death
just
was?
like
method.
yes, the method and the leading up to it. It just wasn't enough for me. You know what I mean? I wanted there needed to be more.
Like they torture him back or something?
So we
had a long talk
we had
about
a very
this.
long talk.
Did you
about
write
this.
another alternate scene?
No. Although I did come up with an idea.
Okay.
I would have almost like, so did you write anything about this? What was your next note here?
Well, so John's note was just that he was disappointed in this death. And I said, I'm
yes.
not.
Yes.
That was really my note. But when we talked about this, I said, like, I think Violet needed this moment. First of all, like, I think she needed to see the life fade out of him, so she knows for a fact, like, this is a memory she can replay in her head. He is 100% dead, especially after what just happened with Jack when he was like her enemy in book 1 and they just like resurrected him. So I think she like needed this for her own peace of mind. But also she said to him, like, I promised you'd die in this room. And I love that Zaden came in and was like, this kill belongs to Violet, basically, for everything that he's done to her up to this point. Mm-hmm. And I would have been really disappointed if she didn't get that kill, even though she was physically not in the state to be able to really execute it. So I appreciate that I was holding my hand up and Minnie just like came in under my hand for some pets. I appreciate that even though Zaden or Dain, either of them, could have gone full like torture mode, exact the revenge that we all wanted to see on Varrish. I appreciate that she got to have this kill, even if it was just with the last ounce of her strength and Zaden still had to help her. Like, I think she really needed this moment for herself. And I could have seen it going differently if we wanted him to really suffer, but I'm happy with this, how it was written.
They're also like in a hurry.
Yeah, they have to get out of there. They don't really have time for
I think if Violet wasn't there, you would have probably gotten a lot more vicious of a kill. Because she was so weak and, like you said, like she wasn't really there to, like, do anything extravagant. But if Zaden had found him alone...
Or Violet didn't want the kill.
Right. There would have been a lot more to that, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is this Violet's first official kill now? Because...
She killed the Venom.
Or Zach.
She killed Jack.
Because Jack didn't die.
Oh, that's true.
Well, yeah, I guess she killed some Venom.
Yeah, I guess. But like directly stab it. Well, no, she killed the guy who tried to assassinate her.
That's true too. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Kidney shot.
She really stabbed the crap out of him.
Yeah, she did. And the people on the roof, the infantry guys.
Yeah.
With Aya. Okay, just kidding. So they're about to like head upstairs and she's like realizing like all the things that Zaden had done, like deserting and, you know, coming to save her and all this stuff. And she's like, you're going to lose everything you've worked for because of me. And he says that I'll have everything I need. And then I had literally highlighted the next few paragraphs of the book, and I could read them here, but then I'd just be reading you the book, and you should just go read it yourself because it's amazing. Go back and reread. This whole confession of love that he gives her is 10/10. I am a huge fan. It is adorable, and I love him. And then she says she loves him too, and they have their little moment.
I mean, you and like 12,000 others, I think. In my Kindle, it was like 13,000 people highlighted this paragraph.
And I was like, oh, me too.
I'm the opposite. I see those, I'm like, yeah, 3,000 of you liked this sentence enough to highlight it? All right.
Sometimes I highlight those just because I want to be part of the group.
That's so telling of your personality.
I should highlight this too. And then whenever they're coming out, like Garrick was like, we need to get them the serum, or maybe Zaden like tells Garrick to go get it. And so Garrick runs ahead. And somebody says to get it for the squad, too. And she's like, my squad? And Zaden looks back and says, they're fine, but they were put under guard in the interrogation classroom after they tried to mount a rescue mission yesterday. And, go Iron Squad. Go team. I'm so glad that they didn't just, like, sit around and do nothing, but they, like, tried to do something, even though obviously they failed. But, like, I appreciated that out of the three of them and potentially others that were stuck in the interrogation room because they tried to, like, save her. What good friends.
Yeah.
And then this is when they get outside of the door or whatever, and they're about to head back up. It says Zaden grabs Violet to head back, his shadows forming a circle of blades. And I think this may have been described one time earlier, but that is freaking sweet. I can just imagine like a sphere or something of blades just around them pointed outwards, like pretty sweet. A protective barrier.
Yeah, that is cool. I feel like that's one of the things that, you know how I think it was when we were in our Throne of Glass podcast, I said that during like battle scenes, my brain just kind of glosses over them and like, okay, fighting, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's just, even when I'm trying to focus, that's just kind of what my brain does. So I appreciate these conversations because this went right past me. It does sound really cool.
I feel that about like geographical stuff. Like, and then we traveled to here and flew there, and then I'm now here, and I'm like, oh, cool, now we're here. Like,
great, good for you.
But instead, there's probably like super vital information in the rest of that, but right over my head.
I'm starting to pay more attention to that stuff now, but I just really I don't know what it is. I have a hard time focusing during some of the like fighting scenes. But anyway,
we find out while Lilith is talking to them that Zaden has been like killing wyvern and dropping them at outposts for like everyone to see, which is freaking epic. And my note for
Amazing.
that was, hide that, Markham. Come up with a lie for that one. It was so good. And then Lilith finally convinced Zaden to let her talk to Violet by herself. And she was talking to Violet and says, Markham saw you as his protege, the next head of the scribes, the only applicant he thought smart enough, clever enough to continue weaving the complicated blindfold chosen for us hundreds of years ago. So that, first of all, was really interesting that even she feels like this was chosen for us hundreds of years ago, and it's a lie that they're like forced to continue, which would be kind of a wild thought that this current generation of professors and whoever else is in charge weren't the people who decided that. They're just kind of like going because someone before them told them they had to, which is kind of really sad. But she said, eventually, I knew you would discover the truth. Maybe not while you were in the scribe quadrant, but currently by the time that you made captain or major, when Markham would start bringing you in the fold, as we do with most at those ranks. So now it makes me question anyone who was a captain or a major, because that means that they probably know that information.
Oh.
Since that's whenever I guess they start to get brought into the fold, and maybe that's like part of potentially getting a promotion, is if they think they could trust you with that information over someone else. So that's kind of interesting. So now anyone that I hear with that title, I'm gonna assume probably knows about that stuff, which includes all the professors and some of the other people I'm sure that we've seen and heard, or even maybe at like Samara and other outposts and stuff like that. So
Interesting.
I don't know.
I had just said Violet's talking to her mom, and she asks, "Are those your knife marks on his back?" And her mom says, "Yes, it's a Tirish cust." And then Violet cuts her off and just says, "Stop talking." And I said, "No, you stop talking. That sounded very interesting, and I want to hear it."
Yeah, for real.
Yes.
So
Same.
frustrating.
My only thought from that was like, if she was about to say it's a Tirish custom,
Yeah.
why would she give a crap about that if this was something that she did purely out of malice or...
Yeah, because there's not many words that start with custom, custard. Probably not what she was going to say.
Custard.
Customization, which is still custom. But yeah, like, she was going to tell you the background of it. Violet.
Yeah. Ugh, Violet.
Well, and if it is a Tirish custom, does that mean like Zaden had that willingly? It wasn't like just a random whipping on his back.
Yeah, and
Was it part of the agreement they made? I don't know.
I feel like if it's a custom, then I feel like the only reason he didn't tell Violet about it was because he couldn't tell her about the deal at all. So it's not necessarily like it was torture. It's just like no, I can't tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. But after this whole interaction with Lilith, I just love this line from Garrick where he says, "No wonder you're so warm and fuzzy, Violet." I want more Garrick.
I know, he's so funny. Well, and then Zaden's like, "We're out of here. We're leaving right now." And Violet says, "No, we need to give them all a choice, or we will be no better than leadership." Which I love that when you see the younger generations trying to be better than the older generations or whatever they've seen is wrong, instead of just kind of following in the same paths. So shout out to Violet there, and then for all of them for like agreeing with that and going on with it and stuff and giving everyone the fair choice.
Yeah. And then a muscle in Dain's jaw flexes. Cheers, everybody. It's our last one of the section. And then Dain's leading this formation, trying to explain the truth to everyone. And Ara Bindhaven shouts, "You're lying!" And I said, well, how the turntables. It just felt very book one when Dain did this to Amber Mavis.
Yep.
Or to Zaden when they were like confronting Amber Mavis. And I just thought this was so funny that Ara Bindhaven's doing it to him now. So I put the gif from The Office in here.
Well, and very similar to that scene is that Violet shares or has Taryn share a memory and everything like that with the dragons too, which is kind of crazy.
True.
But even more crazy that some of those dragons choose not to share it with their riders. And then those riders are like, "What do you guys mean? What did you see?" Like, as a rider, I think I would be like, I would lose all trust in my dragon for knowing that they purposely kept something from me that literally everyone else just saw for whatever reason.
Yeah.
They kind of describe as they're flying away that Andarna's just being carried while asleep. And I was like, I'm just a bit worried for her being sleepy so long. Maybe it means that she's just going to be so freaking sick, nasty, powerful when she wakes up. But I don't think Vi's signet with her will be the same for sure. Like, so it'll be interesting to see what it is. And I'm really like erring on the side of it being something mental for the same reasoning that I think someone that we know is going to turn Venin, where it's like this whole book series has been like, oh, these mental powers are like forbidden. They're like not wanted. So I could very easily see her having some sort of mental ability. And now that she's probably not coming back, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. No one's going to try to kill her for it. So.
Oh, yeah.
Well, do you think like intrinsics are killed because they would know the truth? Like,
no, because
like if intrinsics are killed because they can read the mind of a major or a captain or whatever they said and learn about venom and tell everybody or something. Yeah. Do you think that if everybody just knows that information, they just wouldn't stop killing intrinsics?
Possibly.
I don't know.
Yeah.
If anything, they might sometimes do it for their own, you know, like that one kid went crazy and they're like, well, there's not really much we can do. Crack.
I mean, they could have hopefully helped him figure it out, but okay.
Maybe.
While they're in this formation, the professors kind of come, and Carr and Emetario and Devera, and Carr comes out and he starts like trying to like attack them and stop them from leaving. And I don't think we knew that Carr was a fire wielder, or if we did, I forgot that information. But then Bodhi comes out and counters his signet, which is freaking sweet. But also, like, I just want to know more of that. Like, could he just like stop her lightning? Can he just like take the shadows away? Like, how does that work? I just need to know more. But also, why would Bodhi need that signet when you think about like each person gets their signet based off like what their personal needs are? So what was Bodhi going through when he got his signet that he felt the need to counter other signets?
Is it also just signets? Like writer's magic? Or is like, could a Venon's magic, he just turns it off?
That's a good question.
I don't know. That's just what Zaden says.
Yeah, it was just
that he can counter signets.
Yeah. Interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah. But the chapter ends, the section ends, part 1 ends with Violet saying, "We're in the air less than an hour later, flying south in the biggest riot I've ever seen. 200 dragons and 101 riders, nearly half the quadrant strong. And more are coming, taking a slower route with the hatchlings." And then she lands and meets Brennan, and she says, "I mean, you did say you needed more riders." End of part 1.
Wow.
Epic.
All right, boys. Give us your overall thoughts at this like halfway point in book 2. Well, this is really the halfway point in all 3 of the books technically that we have currently.
Good point.
Like we're halfway through the published part of the series. Is what I'm trying to say. How are we feeling?
Love everything. What an incredible chapter section. Still really bummed about Varrish's death. Wish it would have been a little more dragged out or something. Also coming to terms that it was Zaden and not Andarna. LOL. Really curious to see what professors joined them. Like we know Devera went with them. So interested to kind of see the makeup of everybody that kind of went with them and left Basgiath. That'll be kind of fun.
Yeah.
I just wrote, because you put halfway-ish, I was like, halfway-ish? This is only 2 parts, right? Like it is halfway through the book?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. It's good so far. I definitely find myself reading to read and having to go back for actual note-taking most times, which I guess is good.
Wow.
I'm told that it's good. I'm told that's the right way to read.
To enjoy it? Yeah. That typically is. Typically is the right way to read. So what are your thoughts on our current characters? Do you have any favorites or least favorites? And I would assume that's changed since some are now dead.
R.I.P. Or not.
Not
I'm a bit suspicious of Nolan right now. I mean, Varrish is dead, so I guess he's going to take the journal to, I don't know, like Pancheck, I guess.
Are we talking about Lyra's journal?
Journal that she
Lyra's
had.
journal.
I thought he said that it was back in the archives and that they couldn't like verify the information because it
so
was
they
back
put
in
it
the
back?
archives or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. But either way, speaking of General Sorengale, I'm assuming she's like a rebel sympathizer at least. I feel like that whole interaction would have gone down way differently if she was in league with all the other leadership who are against all the marked ones and all this stuff. Still really love Aric. I think he'll be playing a larger role in things. I am so pumped that she finally looped in the squad, Rhiannon and Sawyer and Riddick. Like, about dang time, for real.
Yeah.
And also that her and Zaden are, like, back on the up and up, because because I think it was the last chapter section where I was like, I don't like that she's not telling anybody anything. I don't like that her and Zaden are fighting all the time. And then I think maybe Jack Barlo will play a pivotal role in support of Violet and Party.
There you go.
With his, change of heart.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wrote for my side, Taryn still remains at the very tippity top of my list. What a guy. Violet, still a gem. The whole Iron Squad, no notes. Love the chemistry. Dain, we'll see. Getting better for sure. He's moving on, if not up. Jack Barlo, what a character. All according to my plan. He has arisen and is a grinnin'. Stay away from citrus, my guy.
Oh my gosh.
Perfect.
I think that was the most glowing, I don't know. I'm just so excited you're excited.
This makes me so happy.
All right. Final thoughts and theories as we head into part 2 of Iron Flame.
I'm wondering if what's happening with the Venom is why Andarna has been so long on the dreamless sleep. Although I'm not really sure how that would work, since it seems like that would also be affecting the wards, which doesn't seem to be happening unless the dragons know and the humans don't. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm trying to think of what the remaining writers and professors' leadership at the school are going to do now, because it's not like they can attack everybody that left. Like, they'll have an even more difficult time with the
They don't even
attacks
know
at
where
the
they went.
outposts. Well, that too, yeah, that's a good point. And like with so many that left Basgiath, I have to imagine they'll have a pretty difficult time with the attacks on the outposts. So I feel like that would be their priority, because eventually, if writers keep dying, they need to replace them. And if there's only so many like riders and dragons at Basgiath now, like where are their like reinforcements coming from, basically. So I could see that going poorly for them, although they still have the wards, which it seems like there's nothing affecting those in any way. Like, it's not like those would be like going down for any reason, at least not yet.
All right.
Kyle?
I feel like the only way forward is outside of Basgiath. One way or another, probably Arisha, but they might go other places. Pretty much lying low, gathering whatever info they have. The book that, Brennan has now, probably digging into that diary. Probably moving to Viscount Tekaris, or whatever his name is, who has the luminary.
Tekaris?
Yeah, who has the luminary to get that from him. But then I also imagine a lot more like Venom involvement in general being outside. I'm still waiting on, like I said, on someone we know to turn Venom, because come on, how are we not going to see that happen? I feel like everyone's a possible contender for it, but 3, most likely, in ascending order, would be Rhiannon, because it's her best friend and would kill her emotionally, but Rhi seems too smart to do that. Dain, because that's her childhood friend and would kill her emotionally, but Dain seems like too much of a rule follower that he would never be he wouldn't vary. But that leaves my biggest contender, Shadow Daddy Dearest. I feel like if he were pushed to a point where he had to do it to protect Violet, or maybe the cause itself, he would dip into the Department of Dirt Divination. So...
What?
The Department of Dirt Divination. I got it right the first time. Don't make me do it again.
That's what that sounded like.
But I feel like that would be a big
Wow.
one. And how you were saying, like, there's still half a book left. There's got to be some sort of conflict. It's got to be something like that. Like, in the first book, we had, like, a major loss of a character, obviously. And I don't know if we're necessarily going to get that again in this one. But it would, I think, make sense to be like, oh, someone is turning to the Venom. Or like, oh, we lost someone to... Maybe get captured by the Venom even. They don't have to turn into them. But I'd be interested for that. And then just hoping that Andarna wakes the frick up soon.
Yeah.
If it doesn't happen in the next 2 paragraphs.
Then what?
Yeah.
I guess I'll keep reading. You're in trouble.
Well, that takes us to our cry counter. I have cried this episode, in the episode actually, but during this reading for Liam. So I am up to 3.
Yeah, and I'm also up to 3 because I cried once in this section for my girl Vi.
Gentlemen.
Still 0.
Still 0.
Still 0.
Right. Well, we'll get them someday. All All right. Well, thank you for joining us as we finish part 1 of Iron Flame. Next week, we'll be starting part 2 with chapters 37 to 44. Make sure you're following us at Between Pages and Friends on Instagram and TikTok for updates, episode schedules, and general bookish shenanigans.
And for even more of those shenanigans, don't forget to check out our Patreon. Hit up betweenpagesandfriends.com for our Patreon link, merchity merch, our Amazon storefront, GoodReads, StoryGraph, links to stock our TBRs, and much, much more. Until next time, stay wordy, stay nerdy, don't stress, and stay blessed.
Hi.
We made it.
Oh my gosh, guys. Kyle. Guys. Stop. Please just stop the recording. Stop the recording.